Hi, I'm Greg Kasavin, here to take you on a guided tour through the world of Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne, a game that's quite violent, quite cinematic, and quite a lot of fun for as long as it lasts. It's not the longest game you're ever going to play, but boy does it have plenty of really intense and very, very cool action, and there's some pretty good replay value actually that comes out of that, just because the sort of stuff that you can do in this game is the sort of stuff that you would want to do in a game time and time again. If you're concerned about having the storyline and some of the particulars of Max Payne 2 spoiled for you, then I recommend that you stop watching, because we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty details here. Instead, if you're on the fence, you could look for GameSpot's full review of the game, which tells you what to expect without giving away anything that you might not want to have spoiled for you. But without further ado, let's start checking out what's in store in this game. Max Payne 2 is built as a film noir love story. It's got the same sort of graphic novel look to it that the 2001 game had, its predecessor, and it once again features the same main character, this down-on-his-luck cop. He's actually now a detective. His name has been cleared since the events of the first game, and things are going okay for Max Payne, but then something happens, and all of a sudden he's on the trail of this murder suspect who he actually has a bit of a crush on, it seems, and he finds this sort of solace in this woman, Mona Sachs, who has a similar background to him, but she's wanted by the law, so suddenly Max finds himself at odds with his job and sort of his heart. The storyline once again unfolds through these graphic novel-style sequences, which are really, really well done, actually, and used quite frequently throughout the game, basically at the beginning and end of each level, and occasionally in between parts of the levels. The game also has some in-engine cutscenes where you'll see the various characters talking and so forth, and these look quite good too, but they're not really as stylish or as impressive as the graphic novel-style cutscenes. The game's story, by all means, twists and turns. It's going to have some stuff in it that you certainly won't expect. It has some stuff that, even if you see it here as part of this tour, you're not necessarily going to know what exactly is going on until you get there for yourself. One of the big secrets with Max Payne 2 is the fact that you don't just play as Max during the game. You actually do get to play as Mona at a couple of occasions in these pretty impressive sequences where the two of them need to help each other out. You'll get to play through sequences of the story from these two different perspectives, and you'll realize that these two characters actually end up saving one another's lives on a number of occasions. In fact, Mona is the one who ends up saving Max's hide more often than the other way around, so it's little wonder why Max has a thing for her, I suppose. She's helping keep him out of trouble much better than he seems to be able to. Mona obviously looks a lot different from Max, but the two of them play basically identically. Once again, this is a pure shooter. You run around, you shoot people, ideally you shoot them in the head. That makes them drop faster, and you can also use things like Molotov cocktails and grenades to cause some sparks to fly, as it were, and they're also conveniently placed exploding barrels and gas cans and things like that, just to add to some of the chaos and make some of the combat more exciting. The biggest change between the original Max Payne and Max Payne 2 is the way in which bullet time works here. In the original Max Payne, bullet time was used primarily to execute Max's shoot dodges, where he'd sort of leap to the side while strafing his enemies, and since he could still aim in real time while shoot dodging in slow motion, you'd be able to pick off, maybe a couple or maybe even 3 enemies in a single jump. Now bullet time is very different. You still have the ability to shoot dodge, but it's much less of an important part of the gameplay. Max is slower to get back on his feet after executing a shoot dodge, though now he does have the ability to stay prone after landing from a fall and keep on firing until the clip of whatever weapon he has equipped is empty. Bullet time is now basically your combat mode. As soon as you get into a situation with hostiles around you, you want to toggle on bullet time and just run into the fray rather than start shoot dodging from side to side. That makes the feel of Max Payne 2 quite a bit different from that of the original game. You're no longer really trying to get behind cover so much in this game, but instead you have this counterintuitive strategy of running headlong into the fight. And the reason why you want to do that is because the more people you take down while in bullet time, the more effective bullet time becomes, and the slower the slow motion gets, and the faster Max himself becomes. So he's no longer slowed down while in bullet time, so he's effectively like a blur running around his enemies, and you could take on small armies in this new bullet time, and it actually serves to make the game a little easier than the first one was. You can just cut through large groups of foes pretty much like a hot knife through butter, using whatever weapons you happen to find. The arsenal in Max Payne 2 is mostly the same as it was in the first game. You've got things like your M4 assault rifles, of course your dual Ingram submachine guns, your Desert Eagle, which you can now use in pairs just like the good old Berettas. There are a couple of new weapons, which include the good old MP5 submachine gun, which is basically the staple of every single modern-day shooter these days. And Mona's weapon of choice is the Dragunov sniper rifle, which is this nice kind of semi-automatic weapon that can take out a lot of foes fast from a long range. Again, she'll often use it to provide covering fire for Max as he kind of runs from point to point. You'd think a game like Max Payne 2 wouldn't have much in the way of creative environments, since it's set in the modern day, it's set in these sort of realistic and gritty areas. And sure enough, a lot of the places you will visit are kind of these rundown apartment buildings, these kind of deserted streets filled only with guys trying to kill you, warehouses, things like that. Though, on the other hand, you will get to experience some sequences that are pretty surprising. As in Max Payne 1, there are a couple of dream sequences in this game that take place quite literally in Max Payne's head, and these are pretty interesting indeed. They don't involve action; they're more story-driven. They have a really weird and creative look to them, and they're pretty cool to watch, and they're a nice way of making the story unfold. But actually, probably the most memorable sequence of Max Payne 2 involves basically a fun house that's themed after one of the sort of clever television shows that you'll catch on some of the TVs in the game. It's basically this fun house themed after this psychological show where you've got these weird surgeons trying to inject you with weird, crazy drugs, and it's got these cardboard cutouts of people like swinging out at you. It's basically similar to like Disney's Haunted Mansion or something, but even more freaky and things like that. And you'll spend some good quality time in this area, actually. The first time you kind of run on through, but you'll be back and you'll see why. The other big thing about Max Payne 2 is that it's got this new physics engine in it, which causes pretty much anything you shoot to fly around in a relatively realistic fashion. That includes human bodies, as well as things like boxes and paint cans. So when you toss a grenade into a crowded warehouse, you'll often see things just go flying all over the place. And this is what gives the game some of its replay value. It's just fun to see what you can do in slow motion with your various explosions, with your various weapons, see what kind of havoc you can wreak as all this stuff goes flying every which way. Like its predecessor, Max Payne 2 is a single-player only game. Initially, only a mode called Detective is available, and that's sort of the standard self-balancing mode. The difficulty should be reasonable for pretty much anyone, because even if you're doing badly, getting killed a lot, the next time you reload your save game, you'll kind of magically find more painkillers that restore your health, or your enemies might be a little slower on the draw, things like that. It's actually a pretty nice system, much like the one found in the original game. Once you finish Max Payne 2, you do unlock a number of new modes, including a higher difficulty mode where your enemies are going to be quicker on the draw, as well as a mode called Dead Man Walking, which basically puts you in a small arena where enemies just keep spawning in faster and faster with the sole intent of trying to take you out. And basically it's just a survival contest. You're trying to see how long you could possibly last, and this can be quite fun. as you sort of inevitably take on these larger and larger groups until they finally squeeze off a lucky shot and take you out. The New York Minute mode from the original Max Payne is back, but only in name, really, because now it's really just a time trial. You're trying to get through the level as quickly as possible, and you gain some seconds on the clock by killing foes and stuff, but it's no longer game over if you run out of time. You're just trying to get through as fast as you possibly can. You could also just level select and hop to any of the game's levels if you want to play through some of the bigger firefights or see some of the cooler story sequences again. The first Max Payne game was considered by many to be quite short, and Max Payne 2 is actually even shorter. It should take you well under 10 hours to finish, maybe not too much longer than 5, in fact, depending on how quickly you can breeze through some of the game's fights. There is replay value to it. The core action itself is just really fun, and the story is very cool. So, is the game a good value? Certainly, it's worth experiencing. It's worth playing. It's worth playing again. But no, it's certainly not long from start to finish. But it's a really great thrill ride while it lasts, and hopefully this has given you a good sense of the sort of action, the sort of drama you can expect while playing the game, and given you a taste of some of the surprises you can expect. And to see more of Max Payne 2, you'll just have to play it for yourself.